It's gonna be a difficult one.
This is a hard one. Definitely a hard one.
I agree.
But we gotta do it.
Lots of emotions.
Oh yeah.
Bramcito, el holandés más latino que conozco yo.
Literally the most Latin European you'll ever know.
Anybody
That's
will
my
be.
pride.
This guy's more Latino than Latinos themselves sometimes.
You know, when you know that a tall white dude likes Bad Bunny the way Bram likes Bad Bunny, you know you're not gonna go wrong with that guy.
Always a good
That's
time.
right. Did you guys hear the latest song, Hollanda?
So you sent that link to me, and I opened it, but then I don't know why my Spotify wasn't working. So I gotta click it again.
It's
I can't
good.
wait.
It's good. It's basically about me.
That's fantastic.
Oh man. Well, Bram, welcome to our podcast, man. It's a
Thank you,
pleasure
guys.
and a privilege to have you as a guest, and super excited to talk about what it means to be a green buyer and some of the challenges you have faced. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I got a whole list of things to talk about. The depths of green buying, we can call it.
The darkness of green buying? No, sorry, the
No,
depths.
the depth. Yeah.
No, absolutely. You know, I'm very excited to be talking to you as well, Bram. You know, I think we go way back, even before you're doing green buying. And, you know, I know firsthand some of the biggest and the most difficult challenges we face in terms of green buying. And I cannot wait to just have a super cool conversation with you and dive in some of these challenges, you know, as a green buyer you face when buying coffee, receiving the coffee, or getting even the coffee to be shipped and shipped on time, and getting the quality to match what you're buying, you're offering versus your arrival samples, you know, all the different challenges, logistical challenges you face. So I'm excited to be here talking to you, my friend, and dive in some of this very varied topics and themes when it comes to green buying.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's super exciting to talk about this and kind of dig into what we do and what we know. Sometimes you kind of forget what you do, and then you talk to the normal people out in the world that don't fly around the world to taste coffees, and you remember it's a pretty cool job to do, but with its complications as well. I think it's going to be Nick's job today to make sure this podcast doesn't last 6 hours and keep us out of the rabbit hole from time to time.
No problem.
But I'm excited. I think coffee. I think once you get to green buying, you know, buying specialty coffee is the most exciting thing there is. But you understand why specialty is special, because it's not easy.
Correct.
Not easy in any stage, and the buying, logistics, quality part of it is definitely a part of that conversation, right? I think buying commodity coffee would be a much more boring and much more easy job in that sense. It's really two different worlds, and it's important to recognize that as well.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, there is the fun part and the cool thing about green buying, you know, going to origin, visiting your producers, talking to them about new things that they are doing, get to experience different cultures. Those are all the beautiful things that, you know, is part of green buying. Why don't you share a little bit of some of the most fun memories you've had throughout your career, on the fun side, on the great part of, you know, buying coffee. You know, I'd love to hear some of your stories, your fun memories in green buying.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I remember the first time I went to a coffee farm was in Nicaragua in 2016. I'd actually been on a coffee farm before in 2012, but I didn't know about coffee. I didn't know it was a farm, so I was there, but I had no idea what was happening, basically, which was in Costa Rica. But in 2016, for the first time knowing about coffee, I went to a coffee farm. And it's a bit of a classic, you know. It's in the back of a truck. a dirt road, the real Indiana Jones feeling that the mountain seems to never end. The truck breaks down on the way, so it was quite a classic experience, which would added to the experience and to the memory. And I remember getting literally on the top of the mountain. This is the highest farm in Nicaragua, and there was this wooden house with a wet mill right next to it, perched on the mountain. And I was like, but where's the coffee, right? And I couldn't see the coffee because it was all under the shade. It was ridiculous. Like I'd seen pictures of coffee trees and red cherries, and I just couldn't see them. So I was like, but where's the coffee? And everybody started laughing, but it's all here. How can you not see it? And you really had to squeeze your eyes and look underneath the canopy where the coffee was. And that being the first experience, I think was great to see, how far away the farms can be and how it's not all crystal clear as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicaragua is one of those like really interesting origin countries. You have a lot of shade grown coffee. Sometimes it's very humid as well. So you have like high fog and density in the air. Sometimes you cannot even see where you are. I have some of the coolest pictures I've taken at origin is actually in Nicaragua. I think not too far from where you're talking about, Bram.
Mm-hmm.
Man, fantastic views, but like so dense, a lot of shade, a lot of canopies, but beautiful country, beautiful origin, nonetheless. And what a privilege, right, to be able to go on your first origin trip to a place like Nicaragua that has faced a lot of different challenges as a country.
Mm-hmm.
The people has a lot of adversity there, and to be able to go to a country like that and then dive in head first and learning about coffee is an incredible privilege.
Yeah, it is. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, no, go for it. I can ask after.
Yeah. No, what I was gonna say is that was the first relationship, and that relationship is still alive with Silvio, which is 7 years later. We're still in contact on WhatsApp every other week. I think he is a producer that shows me how engaged producers can be and how curious they can be. It's almost asking me like, how's the coffee arriving? Is it selling? And for me, when a producer is worried about whether his coffee is selling or not, it's such a great sign. Because once we buy the coffee, or even the roaster buys the coffee, or the coffee shop buys the coffee, it's not done until the cups are drank. And even if it's just 10 or 20 or 50 bags of coffee, that's many, many cups that people have to wake up and every day feel like, okay, I want to drink this coffee. I want to enjoy this coffee. The barista wants to serve this coffee and recommend it to its clients. So it's crazy the coffee we buy in green, we buy, and then it can be drunk a year later, 18 months later, before it's really ran out and it's really drunk by the thousands of consumers. It takes a long time for the cycle to be completed. And if people are interested in the whole cycle, then I know they're passionate in what they do and they care for what they do in their product.
So you mentioned how Silvio is like a pretty engaged producer with you, and it makes me kind of think like, we obviously on the importing side, there's a lot of value of having a green buyer, being at origin, and understanding what's going on to help communicate that to the consuming side. But on the flip side, like how is a green buyer? How can a green buyer be valuable to a producer as well beyond just buying the coffee?
Great question.
Yeah, I think we're really in a gateway to the market, of course, for the physical coffee, for the transaction, for finding it, buying it, shipping it, selling it, but also the follow-up and the recommendations for the next years. Do people like the coffee? Did they like the washed or the natural better? And what should they produce next year, or anything they should change, or things they should follow up on? So I think we're really, in a way, agents for the producer, representatives of the producers, more than anything. And whereas, in the case of Ally Green Importer, we have the representatives of the roasters, which is the sales team, and then we have the representatives of the producers, with the buying team, and we come together and match the two and find the best solutions. So the buyers, we represent the producers in the best way possible and help them to get all the information they need to make the best decisions they need to make. Sometimes they're hard decisions, but as long as we give them the information they need, they can do that in good trust and good confidence.
What's one of the hardest conversations you've had to have with a producer or those at origin?
I think COVID was a very hard time. You know, it was a very hard time for everybody. But I'm very proud of the decisions Ally made in that time, and it really stands for what we do. Because a lot of roasters shut down, the clients shut down, and coffee stopped flowing for quite a while. But we took the decision to honor all our contracts, 100%. And we took on a lot of contracts as well of some other people who may not have done the same thing. And in the end, that was a good decision because things opened back up again. Coffee shops and roasters found their ways. Many of our clients were able to grow through COVID, through online sales, and the green coffee flow is uninterrupted, right? And I think that's the power of coffee. People want to drink coffee always, one way or the other, and even the pandemic could not stop the consumption of coffee. I think in the end, it may have helped grow the home barista scene and everything. And we were able to honor those relationships with the producers and guide them through that period as well. But it was hard to say, like, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to buy your coffee. But as I said, they know that that's not the last step. And nobody can know what's going to happen to the world. And they're worried, this roaster, they visit every year, they're not going to visit anymore. And it was a very quiet period. There was a very little origin travel for 2 years. And I remember I went to Los Pirineos in El Salvador twice. I think I went in 2020, right before the pandemic started. And then I went again in 2021. And I was like, hey, Jago, how's it going? How has it been busy? Because I know Los Pirineos is a well-known farm and receives a lot of visitors. And he said, well, actually, nobody came. It's you again.
And
I was
that's
like, wow.
and that's very interesting, Brian, because you touched on a very good point. That was a difficult moment as well, because when you went there in 2020 before the COVID, you were there with Gilberto. You were there with Gilberto, Diego's dad, which we lost Gilberto to COVID. And now, fast forward to a year later, you're going there now to meet with Diego, that had just lost his dad. That is one of the main innovative producers for specialty from many years ago. A guy that was doing amazing things and did amazing things for our industry and for the producers worldwide. And now you're going back to talk to his son that all of a sudden has to inherit this farm, inherit this business, and then start working on it, and then having these candid conversations and see how Diego was doing. Even though he grew up seeing his dad managing the farms and doing his job, now he was the one that having to lead the charge after losing his father to COVID. And I know that was probably very challenging as well.
It is, yeah. You really do go through thick and thin, and you want people to trust that they can count on you. They can count on you. They can count on your word. Because if you do it well, you can buy coffee for many years. I always say, coffee trees are gonna give fruit every year, and people are gonna wake up every day and drink the coffee. So we should be able to do business every year. Like, if we don't, we're doing something wrong. And the people understand that and face the challenges and face sometimes the breaking point and figure out what to do and come to a solution together. We really grow as friends, as business partners, and then we can flourish. Because of course there's gonna be issues, there's gonna be troubles, and it's easy to give up and say, okay, I'll find another buyer or buy coffee from somebody else. But that doesn't work in the long term. I feel like the long-term relationships are the one that are most profitable for everybody as well in the long run. 1 year more, 1 year less, but I think if you can make it work every single year, you have that stability, and that stability is also worth something.
So, kind of switching a little bit, can you just kind of break down really quick what are some of the key components to what it means to be a green buyer from the perspective on the importer side? Because obviously, I'm sure there's differences of what it means to be being a green buyer for a medium or large size roaster, or even a small roaster. But what is it? What are the components to that for on the importing side?
I think there's a lot of cupping and knowing about coffee, about process and varieties and farms and countries and profiles and all that. That's a really important part of technical knowledge you have to have and have to develop. But I think, if you would say, what should a coffee buyer excel at first and foremost, it's communication. You need to be able to talk to a lot of people at the same time and make sure that different people talk to each other as well. But you're, buying green coffee regardless of how much, if you're buying from origin, you are going to have to put different people in touch and work with multiple parties to get the coffee moving, to get it shipped on time, in good shape, and make sure everybody's happy. And as the buyer, once you say, okay, I'm going to buy this coffee, I'm going to be responsible that it's going to get out and get in and it's good, then you have to take the lead on that. And you cannot, sit back and wait for things to happen. You have to make them happen. And for that, you need to communicate through different languages, through different cultures, with different people. And if you multiply that by hundreds of coffees, as we do with Ally, then you get a web of communication going pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
And with that then comes... Sorry, go ahead, Ricardo.
No, go ahead, Bram.
I was going to say, and with that then comes the organization, right? The spreadsheets, the managing of information, managing of data, and that you may not think too much if you're just looking at farms and walking at farms and talking to producers and having a beer and cup and a coffee. Behind that is a lot of organization of data and information that you need to keep track of to make sure that, again, to make sure you can fulfill your promise to the producers and to the client, because it's easy to talk a lot and cup a lot and travel a lot. But if you don't back it up with action and results, then it's worthless in the long term. And then you might do it 1 year, but to do it 5 years, as I have done with Ally, and Ally is a company 10, 12 years now, you need to continue to back it up with results, and you cannot just, ease off or back off and wait for things to sort themselves out. You need to continue to work on it and keep pushing.
Absolutely. And I think that all this organization and all this work that is put behind the scenes, so to speak, is actually to improve communication, is to actually have enough information and data to communicate with the people you're working with. At the end of the day, you touch a very, very important point, which is communication. And I think that we can never forget that behind all of this trade, behind all of these transactions, we have people doing it. And it's so relational that sometimes we forget, we go to the transaction part of it and we forget about the people behind, or, we're just looking at a cupping score and we are looking at the price and but we forget that there's a lot of people behind the scenes making it all happen. And Bram, I don't know what is the message that as a green buyer you would give to other buyers when it comes to buying coffee and take into account the relational side, the people-centric side of our trade?
Yeah, you touch a very good point, which is the people, right? And I wrote down here on my list empathy as well as a key word, because there's different sizes of buyers, either it's 1 bag or 100 bags, and there's different sizes of producers and different levels of how producers are engaged. But if you just think especially about some of the smaller scale farmers who farm on 1 to 10 hectares, producing 5 to 50 bags, for a roastery usually, or for an import, it's not a huge amount. So quite quickly, one of your suppliers is a small portion of what you buy. Let's put it like that. But on the other hand, for them, you the buyer, you're buying almost everything they produce. So in that sense, you as a buyer, you become a very important part, financially and commercially,
Relationally,
and also again, and relationally, right? So they are practically working and producing coffee for you to buy the whole year. So they're thinking about okay, how are they doing? Are they happy? Are they doing well? So they really start to care about you, and you start to care vice versa. And I think that's important to understand, that if you have that direct relationship, it comes with a level of social and emotional commitment as well. And you need to have empathy. You cannot just buy and forget, and I truly believe that if you buy coffee and you want to do a direct trade or a direct relationship and have that engagement, then you should not come in with the idea to buy it just once. Then that's for me, it feels, I will feel dirty, if you make that engagement, if you have that emotional connection, then then you got to commit to it. And that's also when things don't go well, you need to keep that commitment and have empathy for the 100 million external factors that can happen. And in that sense, sometimes if you have skill to buy and different levels of coffee you work with to buy, then you can be flexible and realistic as well, right? So if a coffee is not cupping well, then you can find a different purpose for it. Because not everybody is always going to produce an 87 point, 88 point coffee. And people know that. But if you say, okay, I only, if a quality is always like a non-negotiable in a relationship, then that relationship is going to be hard to keep alive for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
That's so true. That's so true.
So, you mentioned communication being one really big priority as an important factor being a green coffee buyer. In terms of like, having prerequisites or someone who wants to be a green coffee buyer, where does cup, like having a certain amount of cupping experience or even origin experience fall when it comes to getting into a role of being a coffee buyer in general?
It's a good question. And on one hand, I say like you need to know how to cup really, really well. But on the other hand, if you have a team that knows how to cup well, you can also cover yourself. I have a friend actually, he's an importer, and he cannot smell. I'm not sure what the medical term is, but his nose doesn't work, so he cannot cup. But he has amazing communication and marketing skills and an amazing passion. People skills, exactly. And he said, I really want to do this, and he focused only on the relationship part because he didn't know about quality, and he was actually able to work with that, and now he has grown, right? And you do have responsibilities for quality, of course, especially for consistency, cleanliness, defect free, because you can have an amazing relationship, but if a coffee is phenolic and nobody's going to buy it, then that it's a bad deal, and we don't want that either. It's not charity. We want to come back every year, and if coffee is defective every year, we're going to stop coming back at some point. So you do need to assure that quality. But to be a buyer, you could even do it without it, if you have the structure, somebody is doing it for you, right? But then the question is, do you have that structure, or how do you get to that structure? And I would say starting out, that's very, very difficult. The one part, though, so if you're like really black and white, do you have to be able to cup? Technically, no, but you're going to make it very, very difficult. And there are some exceptions that have been able to do it, but I would say if you can cup and you love to cup and you excel in that, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I can imagine if someone chooses not to go the route of not cupping, at minimum, I would assume that they'd have to understand the language to be able to communicate at least what their team is finding in the coffee or what the market's saying or whatever, right?
Exactly. Not only their team, but also I do believe that cupping is a very important part of feedback to the producers. How is their coffee? An honest, open, transparent feedback like, hey, this harvest is good. This harvest is not good. It's better. It's worse. The natural did work. The honey didn't work. So cupping is a great feedback loop for that. And again, if you go back to the relationship, people want to have your personal thoughts and ideas. And if you come with, well, my team cupped it and said, the natural wasn't good, they'll be like, okay, but what did you think? I still get that question because I have a lot of powerful relationships with people. But with Ally, of course, now we have an amazing team, and I think we're going to hit now our 7th lab in Australia. With different people cupping coffees, and I don't cup all the coffees anymore. We do, and then people say to me like, but Bram, what did you think? I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't cup it, and it is very, very difficult to talk to somebody about a coffee you didn't cup. You do miss that connection sometimes, and at some scale you need it. So like I'm a buyer, and we're at the level that I cannot cup every coffee because it's just too much. And at the other hand, if you're small enough but you're not cupping, then you're gonna miss a part of that communication and that vibe. So I would say if you cannot cup, you're gonna have to have a really good communication. And if you can only cup and you have terrible communication skills, then maybe the buying role is not for you, but you'd be more focused on quality control or quality assessment.
That's great, Bram. How important do you think that as a green buyer, knowing a different language or knowing the language of a different producing country, or even taking to the as far as understanding the culture of the people that you're working with as a green buyer, how important do you think those two things are? One is the language, and the other one is the cultural aspect of it.
And then actually,
I've,
if I can add one more point, question to that too, is do you also think that industry-wide there is a gap when it comes to that?
yeah, I think it's tremendously important. It's I'm lucky enough to I've learned Spanish before I started working in coffee. And if I would not have spoken Spanish, I would not have become a coffee buyer or have progressed to my career as I have up until this point. The Spanish was very, very important for that because I could talk not only to international exporters or people who know Spanish. I could really communicate with any participant in the supply chain. That includes smaller scale producers, but also wet mill operators or warehouse people. So if you're limited in the language you speak, you're limited in the amount of people you can speak to. If you're limited in the amount of people you can speak to, you're limited in the amount of things you can influence yourself directly. So you really limit your scope of the things you can get done. And as I said before, it's about getting a lot of things done. And sometimes, it's easier to get something done when you can call 4 different people to get 4 different things done, to call one person who does 4 things for you, right? So it's about a really big part about efficiency. That's just the language. And then culturally, that goes to a big part of more the social, emotional relationship, right? I believe you build relationships on memories you can share and events you can celebrate together, be it a soccer match or a religious commemoration or on Independence Day. If you know a culture well, or you can participate in a culture as a foreigner and you can commemorate those things, then that relationship can really go into a deeper level. For example, I lived in Costa Rica. I'm married to a Costa Rican lady, so I know that culture very, very well. So the connection I've been able to make in Costa Rica, for example, are very, very deep because of that. Because I celebrate Independence Day. I sometimes meet the producers we work with. I can meet them at concerts, or I can meet them at bars or at coffee shops. So it's really participating in that local life, the local culture, and they will also not only see you as the buyer, and they will be able to see you as a companion in their culture, and then you forge those deep relationships, as I said, that are so key to excelling and maintaining those relationships. And I think I did it as a foreigner in Costa Rica and some other countries, and Ally therefore also hires a lot of local people, right? Because they already have that. I mean, it's implicit already, which really helps to create that trust, which is so important. What was your last question, Nick, about the gap, right? I mean, there is a gap, yes.
Yeah, when I say gap,
and then there's
based on your interactions, did you just at trade shows with different buyers, and even I'm sure you've crossed paths with other people as well, even at Origin.
And there is a gap, and then I believe there's people who fill the gap. I think as Ally, we fill that gap because there's a huge gap. And without companies like Ally, a lot of this trade and a lot of this availability of coffee and availability of market for the producer would not be possible at all. You would see a hugely reduced amount of different coffees that reach the market.
Absolutely. I honestly, just having the opportunity to be at Origin with other buyers, or being at Origin with other people coming in to assess quality or to buy coffee and so on, and also hearing stories from other producers and friends in the industry, in the origin side, we hear and we see from time to time, and thankfully it's not as often, but from time to time, Nick, talking about this gap that you're mentioning, we see people coming to origin expecting origin to be just like back home, and not really trying to understand the cultural aspect of things, and not being respectful in that manner, which kind of like puts a limitation, a barrier between this buyer and the people trying to the people that he's trying to buy coffee from. And I think that there's this gap, and if people really understand that when you're traveling to origin, you're not traveling in your own country to begin with. You're traveling to a different place, and as a different place, you are a guest. As you come with that mentality as a guest in a different country, you don't go to somebody's house and you open the fridge, for example, if they don't ask you to open the fridge, right? So if you come into somebody else's house as a guest, you act as a guest, and that takes it's being respectful of their culture, being respectful of their costumes, being respectful of their religious background, being respectful of their political views. I'm not coming to my own house. I'm coming to somebody else's house in that regards. And I think that there is also an understandable misunderstanding gap there, that when people come to origin, they're coming to a different place. And they, as a guest, they need to act as a guest with respect and in a proper manner.
That's totally right. And a lot of origin travel, you're received with such incredible warmth by people you don't know, which you will get to know, but if you don't know. And I sometimes I think about like, wow, I'm here for the first time. I'm staying in these people's houses. They're cooking food for me. They're serving me usually cold beer or some water, or taking me around their car. Like, what if I would take the head of a coffee roaster? Coffee roasters usually have a supplier for coffee and then a supplier for bags, or a bakery or whatever. Like, would you go to a baker and go to their house and sleep in their bedroom? Usually not. Like, these relationships are really truly something different. But because of that, it doesn't take away that you're a guest, right? So because you're received with so much warmth and people are often so hospitable, it's easy to forget that you are a guest. But I sometimes have to go back to like, wow, if I would do this in my own country, this would be really special, really exceptional. For sometimes, regardless of the size of the transaction, big or small, you don't visit your baker's house often. On the first, you buy a couple of boxes of cupcakes. After 2 months, you go and visit their bakery and then you sleep on his couch. It doesn't happen. Or if it does, let me know. And I think that's special about the green trade.
I could not agree more. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's an interesting way to put it. So one thing I'm curious on too about, what you've been doing, Bram, and your journey as well, is you went from being a Central America buyer for Ally, essentially covering like four countries more or less. I mean, probably more or less, but to then becoming a sourcing manager and now managing, essentially overseeing multiple origins worldwide. So my question is two-part. One is what is one of the biggest differences between origins that you noticed? And then two, what is a very common challenge that producers are facing worldwide, not just in Colombia, not just in Ethiopia, not just in Nicaragua? What is one very real common problem that is just putting a barrier for producers and they're struggling to face?
Yeah, so first of all, when you learn about coffee, and I learned from a textbook when I was a barista, you plant the seed and then tree comes out and you pick the cherries and you wash and you dry it and it ships. Well, that journey is true for every single coffee, but it's so different between one country and the other. And all the differences really make a difference on how you buy the coffee, how the coffee may taste or not. So the cultural differences in the supply chains, I think, is very often overlooked. For example, in Costa Rica, most coffee is sold in cherry form. So the producers, they sell the cherry to a mill who mills the coffee and then blends from different producers. In Colombia, traditionally, there was a lot of parchment sales. Now cherries is gaining popularity there as well, but the producer would pulp and wash the coffee and then sell wet parchment. Whereas in Nicaragua, they may sell dry parchment. In Ethiopia, it's all cherry again, but through cooperatives. So there's all these differences between different countries that influence the quality, of course, in terms of who does what
In
and how
Brazil,
centralized is
they
that.
pre-mill it. They do a pre-mill before they sell the coffee too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
there's so many variations, right? Sorry, Bram, didn't mean to cut you off, but like
Yeah,
for
no, all
example,
good.
in Brazil, producers they have capability of pre-milling the coffee before sending to the dry mill for a final dry milling to be according to the specs that they sold the coffee. So yeah, sorry, Bram.
No, it's all good. It's a great example. Brazil, correct me if I'm wrong, I think natural accounts for the large majority of coffee, right? And a washed in Brazil is more expensive than a natural, usually, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yeah, if you consider the majority of coffee, of course there's some really high end naturals, of course, that are worth more than high end washed and whatnot. But talking about large scale, washed is more special in Brazil than natural. But if you go to Guatemala, natural is more special than washed. So you can know all the theory about how it's dried and whatnot, but if you don't know these differences and you go to Guatemala and say, yeah, I want a really high end natural in a large volume, they're gonna look at you like, oh no, that's kind of strange. So it's the same preparation style with such different results in quality and also in availability and how you negotiate this. And I think that also how symphonies negotiate is very important to understand as a buyer in different countries. So as Ricardo said, Brazil has it's pre-milling coffee. Usually has a larger stock of coffee. You can buy Brazilian coffee year round. You can ship year round, and they're always focused on that constant availability for the roasters, as most roasters always use Brazilian coffee. In Ethiopia, you have to get coffee out before June. Like if you don't get coffee out before June, the rain season starts, and that can start to affect the quality. Or if the rain season does start, you haven't shipped the coffee, you have to assure that it's, for example, stored in grain pro bags in Addis Ababa, and that it's now in the capital and not in the coffee fields. So there's all these little details about supply chains you must understand to make the correct decisions. Because of course, it can be September. You can call up an export in Ethiopia and say, I want to buy a container of coffee. But at the time, you have to consider that it's probably in a different state as that same coffee was in April.
You
And you need
have
to know what to, yeah.
Yeah, and then you also have like access to infrastructure. In some countries, you have more infrastructure than other producing countries. Also, information technology, production technology, post-harvest technology. There's a lot of variations between producing countries sometimes. And as a green buyer, right, Bram, you need to be aware of those differences because also those details may impact also in the cost of production. And therefore, when I have that in mind, I need to negotiate the price. I cannot negotiate the price for Brazil, for example, the same way I negotiate a price for a Colombia or for a Costa Rican or a Guatemala, because also you have the question of production volumes, right? So there are different things that are important to different producing countries. And if as a green buyer, we don't take that into account, we may not be able to properly do our jobs or even like communicate in a wise manner with the people that we're dealing with in the different countries, our producer partners or suppliers.
Exactly, and in Brazil, many producers produce a larger scale, and many of the exports have a large scale as well, because Brazil is one of the biggest producers. So they are much more accustomed to having stocks and also work, for example, more with the sea market, have a deeper understanding of that. And so if you go to Brazil to buy a large volume, most people they will consider the sea market, they will consider the stocks in Brazil and whatnot. For example, if you go to Ethiopia, nobody works with the sea market. It's all about the local cherry price and the local conditions, and also, for example, what dictates the national bank. So Ethiopia works with a minimum price every single week. They update their price. If you come in, it's like, hey, I want to buy this coffee at this price, and and it's below the national price. They're like, what are you doing? This is legally impossible. So you need to know what to ask and what you're asking for to be taken serious as well. Because in some cases, you have to be taken serious to get good coffees as well. Because believe it or not, they're sourcing the highest quality coffees. There is serious competition for that, no doubt.
Absolutely. Bram, how in the last, I would say post-COVID, how often do you see problems in terms of like producers or suppliers or exporters trying not to do their part that was agreed on a contract? For example, we have had, for example, issues with containers arriving at destination with some sort of a quality issue or some other issues, and then that communication goes back, because I know that we are very communicative about any problems that we face when it comes to quality or so on. How often do you see some producing partners, exporters, not trying to not do their part that they agreed to based on the contract that we have?
Yeah, no, as you said, issues happen. I mean, with the hundreds of millions of bags of coffee that are shipped worldwide, of course, things are going to happen. And when I say relationship, I really look at when something happens, what is the response, right? I would say most people they stand for what they sell, and they want to right their wrongs, and I think the only times that relationships do sometimes come to an end is when things happen and people don't respond for it, and that's very unfortunate if it does happen. And that's important why, again, communication is very important. Everybody's clear that what you're agreeing on what you're selling, and that it's not, I don't like to work with people who sell and forget, so you need to sell, and after you sell, you need to deliver, because, we don't always buy coffee for immediate delivery. Sometimes we buy coffee to be shipped in 4 months, 5 months. It's very easy to sell coffee. Delivering to the port and exporting is one thing, and making sure that it's good on arrival and the after sales. The further along the line the problems occur, the least likely people are that they want to bother about it. And when I know people, when I say like, hey, this coffee arrived 8 months ago, right? It was good, but now we had a roaster that just started roasting it, because sometimes people, they like to book ahead and they wait for the coffee, and then something happens. Because there's 320 bags or 275 bags in a container, because we do not physically inspect every single bag. We do statistical tryouts, and if the coffee is good, we can release it to the client, but things can happen. We've seen last year we had a Cheeto in a coffee bag, one Cheeto in one coffee bag. Like, things happen, either with packing or with humidity, moisture, anything can happen. But in this case, let's say it's 8 months after coffee arrived to destination, the roaster
Bullet
started.
cases as well.
They open the bag and there's a Cheeto. And they're like, oh, I don't want this coffee because it's tasting like cheese. You could say like, oh, well, this is not my problem anymore. This was 1 year ago. Or you could say, like, oh, wow, I understand that I packed this. It was packed in my facility. Either you did it personally or you hired people to do it. If you take the responsibility to respond and think with us for solutions, then you're committed, right? And then it's like, wow, something happened, and I'm never going to end a relationship because something happened. That would be stupid. We make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But how do you respond to your mistakes to instill the trust that A, you're going to do everything necessary that it doesn't happen again, and B, you're going to collaborate to fix the issue in the best way possible. And yeah, you get a little bit of everything. Some people say hands off, oh, it's your coffee now, bye-bye. And then, you're not going to be the first person I'm going to call when I need a new delivery, right?
Right.
And some people are like, I'm sorry, let's fix it. And that's the attitude we appreciate.
It's very relational, and I think as a relationship, it has to be mutually beneficial. I think that sometimes people forget about that as well. Of course, you have the people's aspect of the trade, it's people behind this. But at the same time, we expect certain things for this relationship to move forward in a positive manner, right? And communication is key. So if there is a problem, communicating the response and how you respond and how you communicate and how you deal with the problem, mutually trying to solve a problem, I think that's, speaks volume when you're thinking about this relationship in the long run, right? Like you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, when we enter a new relationship with a new producer, a new supplier, a new exporter, we are not entering that relationship for a one-time deal, for one transaction. We are really trying to build a long-term relationship, mutually beneficial relationship for the long run. And I think it's very key. If people really understand that communication and often communication and constant communication is key, things will be in a good place. My dad used to tell me as a kid all the time, when we are very quiet and we are not saying anything, and he would say, like, your silence worries me. And it's in a relationship is like this. If I'm there is a problem with the coffee that we purchased, and then we don't hear back from our partners, hey, listen, this problem happened. How can we deal with this? How can you help me solve this? Because we also part of this deal. And if they don't say anything, if they don't communicate, really their silence is worrying the buyer, is worrying people, and creates that uneasy feeling for this relationship to continue in a positive manner. So the really way to do it and go about it is just like getting the bull by the horn and dealing with the problem and finding the solution together and moving forward. I don't recall how many in all these years that I've been doing this, and I know you as well, Bram. I can probably say there's a handful of people that we don't want to work with anymore because of how they conducted themselves. But how many hundreds and thousands of producers we work and we have been working for years and years and years. And when we have problems, we go together and solve them together. There's a ton of them. We can count on a handful of the people we don't work anymore with because of not fulfilling their obligations. But the big picture is that thousands of producers we work with, year in, year out, for the long run, they do their part. So it's beautiful to see that as well. Not just the problems, but also how we can actually together solve the problems we face when you're buying and selling green coffee. And this is a relationship. If we understand that mutually we can solve this together, then things are going to be much better moving forward.
Yeah, totally. And then once you do overcome those problems, then you can look back on them later as well. A year later, 2 years later, like we remember when we're so worried about these 50 bags, and because in the end it was nothing, and then this guy bought it and he just put like caramel syrup on it and all was good, and these things happen. And then if you can laugh about it and you say like, wow, we went through this, and if anything happens again, now we know what to do, and we're not going to stress as much as the last time, because of course it's going to be stressful. But hopefully after 5 years, there are still things that are completely new to me. There's like what just happened. With international trade, with logistics, anything can happen. Holes in containers, filled with water, wet bags. A lot of these things, they don't have an overnight solution. But if I stand and mention like, hey, this happened, I'm really sorry this happened to you. I know you did not do this on purpose, right? Or this is completely out of your control, but I want to let you know that this happened and we need to work on it together. If I get a message within, normal response time of 24 hours, like, hey, I'm sorry this happened, let me look into it. That's all I need. And then you do have to look into it. But if I don't hear back for 4 days, I start to get nervous.
That's
it's
right.
about like, if you say, I hear you and I want to fix this, that's the start you need. And then we can sit together and take the time and dig in and see what happened and review and whatnot. But if the first response is like, oh, I didn't do this, or oh, it's your problem now, that's not a great start to fix a problem.
Not at all. We hear stories from time to time, and recently I heard a story from one of our clients, the green buyer from one of our clients, and he was complaining about a coffee, a geisha that he bought from us, and I was like, sure, like what's the problem? And even though I didn't do the sales, and I was just in this place, and then he wanted to talk to me about this problem. And he said, no, I bought a coffee from you guys, and the coffee is not tasting right, and it was an expensive coffee. I said, oh, okay. Well, let's talk about it and see if we can find a solution here, because we don't want you to be unhappy about a coffee you bought from us. And so as we started to develop the conversation and understand, and I was asking a few more questions, I found out that he was complaining about a geisha that he had purchased from us a year ago, that we delivered to them a year ago, that they were storing in their warehouse, which wasn't climate controlled, since a year ago. And I'm thinking, how can I help you now, a year later? A coffee that you purchased from us, when you probably purchased, the coffee was stellar, and you waited for a whole entire year to roast it. The coffee is not going to get any better. It's an agricultural product. It's going to lose organic matter, and there is a shelf life, a prime, optimum shelf life. But as we started talking, and I started showing them that there was nothing we could do because we didn't do anything wrong, then the client understood, yes, I think the fault is mine. And then he understood that there was no claim to be done. There was no claim to be claimed, and he was wrong. So, but again, being open to have this communication, this conversation, and really dive in an understanding way. But again, if the client had said, "Hey, listen, we bought this coffee a month ago, and the coffee is not the same," then I'm like, okay, well, then let's solve this problem. Let me replace the coffee for you. Let me see if I can find a different lot, send you samples, and then find something that you're happy with. By no means, we would need to take care of it. But again, communication is always fundamental and is key in these types of situations.
Totally, yeah. And it's also, I've been in that seat of your client as well, being the client and coming with complaints or questions or issues, and I've learned a lot from people holding me accountable, producers or exporters or cookers. I'll be like, okay, and what did you do, and how did you do this, and did you look into this, and then you sometimes need to be open to be critical of yourself and go over your actions and say like, hey, you're right, it's not a complaint, or it is a complaint, but I was wrong, and that's where you can learn a lot as well, to sometimes get off your high horse and be open to be criticized and be held accountable for what you do. I think that's very important for a buyer as well, because nobody knows everything, and not a lot of things have happened, and the longer you stay in the industry, the more you've seen, but you've never seen it all.
Not at all.
No, super good. When I got all of this is like, it's like the solution to all problems in life it comes down to communication, literally. It sounds so obvious, but it's that simple. So
we can start couples counseling here.
No, Green Buying Counseling Group.
Yeah.
Green Buyers Council Group, I guess. We need to come up with a little name and a little logo, and then we should create the Green Buyer Councils Group, Counseling Group, something.
You start like a Facebook or LinkedIn group, people will join.
No,
that's right.
Dr. Phil for coffee, but I have the cupping results here. What do you think about that?
Hey, you know what, Nick? This is actually a great idea, Bram. We should create some sort of I don't know where, so people can actually put in all their experiences that they had in the past, bad experiences in green coffee, and then see what the comments are, and then also start trying to address them. We'll hire Bram to be a consultant to answer all the questions I have.
I can do auto moderation. I would love that. And especially what did you find in your bag of coffee?
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
That is something really interesting. As I was saying earlier, we have people that found like bullet casings inside of a coffee bag. Stones and rocks and sticks. Those are like boring stuff. But the actual things that sometimes one time people found like a dead rat inside of a coffee bag. It would be interesting to hear the stories of what people actually found inside of a green coffee bag.
If you think about the amount, the millions, billions of shipping containers that go on the boats, and there's holes in containers and things happen, and it's just the skill of not trade in general, but and coffee. It's such a huge skill, and in these things, it doesn't matter if it's specialty or commodity. It rains regardless of what's inside the bag. So you can really find anything. Of course, we try to keep the highest standards possible for packing and milling and everything, but there are things out of our control. I love the Cheeto story because it was just the most perfect picture when the roaster opened the bag, and the Cheeto was just right on top. It was like it's still in perfect shape. as if it was just placed there.
The guy was eating a Cheeto while he was like sewing the bag, and then he fell from his mouth into the top of the bag, and he didn't realize.
And he did like, okay, I don't care.
Oh man, Bram, thank you so much, man, for sharing all of your experience and insights and perspective. And I know in the beginning we said this is kind of sad, but also bittersweet. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I want to say my thank you to you, and it was a privilege to have you on.
No, it's good. It's my pleasure. I think it can be part two as what is life like buying coffee for a roastery and being a client of an ally. I think that's gonna be a nice one as well. Maybe I'll completely change my perspective.
Well, maybe you will. I hope you don't forget what you learned while you're here at Ally.
I will not. I plan to put it to good use.
I know you will. I know you're gonna do great things. For me as well, Bram, it's been an honor to know you all these years. Of course, I'm hoping not to go anywhere, but for me to see your journey from when you were still working in Nicaragua, trying to promote Nicaraguan coffees with some of the producers there, and then coming to work at Ally and building this amazing program you have built here in the last 5 years. It's been awesome to see your journey. I cannot wait to see what you're going to do moving forward. I know you're going to do great things. And for me personally, you're not just like a colleague and a co-worker, you're a friend, and I cannot wait to see what you're going to do in the coffee world moving forward as well. Don't be a stranger. This is your house. We are your people, and we care dearly for you, and wish you all the best and much success in your new journey, my friend.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate it a lot. And as you say, it is my house. I feel like, you and I in a big part have built, not the whole house, but, a couple of rooms for sure, a basement and maybe a little garden. So, it's truly felt like, it feels crazy, but it feels like Ally is my company, right? In a way. And that entrepreneurial spirit is why it's so hard to leave. It's why I liked it so much. But it's also exactly what set me up for new great things. So you built your own your own demise in training me so well that I want to pursue those skills in roasting as well.
Well, you had all the talent. You had all the talent, and you learned how to use your talents and develop your talents, and you became an incredible green coffee buyer and managing an incredible green coffee team that you helped to build. So hats off to you, man. And time to write a new chapter, and I cannot wait to read this new book that you're going to be writing. And again, we are here for you. Don't be a stranger. This is your house, like I said. And man, I know for a fact that you're going to do great things, man.
Thank you very much. There's one thing you didn't teach me, which is how to roast coffee.
Well, that's right.
I still need to figure that out.
As a roaster, I'm an incredible green coffee seller. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I'm not a good roaster. I can roast, but I'm not a good roaster.
All right. That I will have to learn on my own then.
I'm sure you will do fine.